In our Brandification interview, we are talking to Kalev, gamification expert, CEO and founder of adact. Kalev, thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm glad to be.
I'd say just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
So I am Caleb. I'm the founder of a gamification marketing company, or a company that has a software for gamification marketing. And we've been doing it a little like 1.5 years or so. So we basically enable brands and agencies to create all sorts of interactive and game-based marketing campaigns, but without any coding. So they can kind of innovate and interact with their audience a little bit better.
Cool. So when did you first get in touch with the topic of gamification and what fascinates you about it?
I think it was 2016, if I'm correct. I moved to New York and worked at a gamification design agency called Dopamine. And what really fascinated me initially was it's a cool way to combine your hobbies with some expertise. Because I also teach game design, and game design is really interesting thing for me. And I know it works. And if it works in games, then why shouldn't it work everywhere else? Because it's kind of psychology, and I've been working on it ever since. I had my own consultancy. When I came back, tried to teach companies how to implement gamification aspects and everything, give lectures and so on. For the past 5 years or so.
Cool. So you just mentioned gamification works. What makes gamification so effective, for instance, when it comes to engaging customers or educating employees, let's say?
I say the most important aspect is feedback. It's basically the most effective way to constantly give feedback to your users or employees or whatever, because game design is like built upon feedback. Like nothing happens without you getting feedback for what you did. And that feedback is very important if you want to kind of promote continuous activity, if you want to promote or if you want to focus attention on somewhere specific. All those game elements that we use, they're only there to provide feedback.
So would you say that feedback is a very universal gaming mechanism that works for essentially everybody?
Yes. Yep. If you don't look at games, you look at general life. Then the way that you lose weight, if you want to lose weight, is you go to the gym and eat healthy or whatever. But what actually works is you tracking how much do you weigh each day, right? So that element of feedback of what is written on the scale is the way that you kind of inform yourself and keep on going. So it's not like unique to games, the feedback thing. But games allow us to use much more different kind of versions of giving feedback. For example, if you get extra points, or if the background changes to something based on your activity, then there's a lot of tools in gamification to give feedback. And yes, I do believe it kind of works for everybody.
Are there any other gaming mechanisms that you would recommend if somebody wants to reach a large and heterogeneous target group, let's say?
There are some that work universally great, but of course, it all boils down to the goal. But a thing called consecutive logins and consecutive bonuses is one thing that I've noticed works almost all the time. Then there are some a little bit kind of like hidden, like small nuances that always kind of make it more effective. One of them is it's called endowed progression, is where you provide someone with rewards before they even start doing it, so they kind of feel that they've already achieved something. And talking about achievements, then correctly placed achievements, meaning like as soon as someone does something, then you complement them with this achievement, which is like visual and everything. These are the kind of couple of things that always go, I think of really early. But the way that when I designed like gamified systems from scratch, then there's this whole system that I kind of use, which is kind of designing the game loop in your system. Mm-hmm. So where every activity goes to the next one and the next one. And if you design the game loop, then you just start kind of matching different game elements to specific places in the loop. But yeah, that's a little bit of off topic.
So that was basically the introduction to how gamification and gamification mechanisms work in general.
Yeah, that's probably the shortest introduction I've ever done on the topic.
So, what are the most common misconceptions about games, about gamers, and maybe also about gamification that you have encountered?
I can give an answer to almost all of them. So, common misconception about gamification is it promotes addictiveness, which is like I have never seen a gamified system that turns out to be addictive. When you're comparing it to gambling, then it's pure out wrong, because gambling is addictive because of the potential financial gain that you can get from it. If you take it out, then it's enjoyable, but it's not going to be addictive. So the idea of gamification is not to create something addictive, but in the shortest amount of elements and the shortest amount of time, give as much as information and feedback as possible. So misconception about gamers, well, there's around 1 million people who have played our marketing games, and the average and the most popular group is ages 28 to 40 females. Which usually people think is like only for children and so on. And misconception about games. Let me put it in straightly, like from our perspective, from marketing, like using games in marketing, is misconception is if you want to do a proper game, then it has to be like super complicated and convoluted, and you have multiple levels and character selections and whatever. In reality, hyper casual games are the ones that work best, meaning you get one tap or one click to do an action in the game, and that works the best.
So it doesn't even have to be complicated in order to work.
It actually works worse when it's complicated, a little bit. Like, not all the time, of course, when you create something awesome, but then you have to realize that you're gonna have to put like 15,000 euros of budget to do something complicated to gain 5 or 10% advantage. So it shouldn't be complicated now.
That's a really good takeaway. It shouldn't be complicated. I like that.
Yeah.
So due to these misconceptions about gamification approaches, I think they have often been met with a lot of skepticism in the past, especially when it comes to the work or education context. So from your point of view, is that changing, or is there still a long way to go? For instance, one could say, I'm not going to use gamification in my company because it's only for young, nerdy males, or it promotes addictiveness, for instance, or people won't take the topic seriously if it's too gamified, something along those lines.
Well, that's true. I mean, we've heard those kinds of objections before as well. And I would say, let's put it this way. 5 years ago, or a little bit more, 7 years ago, no one really knew what the topic is all about. Then we progressed to the part that, okay, now we know what it's all about. Now we have those problems that we have to solve. And then I would say, when a little bit of a newer generation comes on top, on the founders and C-level executive positions, then the misconception is not so popular amongst those people. So I would say give it a couple of more years, and people are not going to ask gonna question the idea that only children play games or something. It just goes away with time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so last but not least, what I would like to ask you is, do you gamify aspects of your own everyday life in order to make them easier or more fun?
So short answer is no. And long answer is it requires still. I don't know. I'm so focused on one thing that I'm doing right now, and not going into too much detail of my personal life, but I have to fix other issues first before I start perfecting the things that I do first. But when I talked about the feedback happening in real life, then of course, like every time that I want to lose weight or something, then knowing that it's so important to give that feedback, then I will never kind of just wing it and see what happens. I'm always very kind of aware that I need this feedback to be written out, and I do have a whiteboard on my house where I've like thought about like actually using it more often, where I have a specific course and a specific things that I need to do, and then I track like how many or like which are the things that I need to do at least once per day, like 3 times a day or a week, and then I check mark them off. I guess that kind of applies as well.
That counts. Yeah.
Yeah.
But are there any aspects or processes in life that you wish were gamified but aren't?
Luckily, a lot of like improvements have been made in this part, but all in all, education and HR level in companies, like the science is so clear about gamified education working better than the standard ways, but it kind of, there's so many like if you want to learn programming through a software to like nowadays, then most of those things have from little to a lot of gamified elements attached to it, which I really like. But yeah, I guess we're a little bit too far off from involving it in everyday schools and everyday learnings. Like, I mean, look at like how long has Duolingo been in existence?
Mm-hmm.
Like, right? And every kind of research that has been done through Duolingo objectively proves that it's a better way to learn a language than just learning it through a book or something. So take note.
Kalev, thank you so much for the interesting insights. All the best to you and to adact.